Hello and welcome to Beyond Games, the YouTube channel about what happens next. I'm Jon Jordan, and in this video I'm going to take a look not at what happens next, but what has happened, and in particular what has happened when it comes to the business of games. So there's many aspects of games we can think about. Obviously kind of financial is one, cultural is another, maybe conceptual, philosophical even. And each have their own kind of points to play. But for the point of this video at least, I think I'm going to ground in the business of games and look historically about what's happened and see what pointers that gives us into what is going to happen next, which is really what Beyond Games is sort of all about. What happens next? How do games impact the rest of society, the rest of the kind of online space, and even what sort of games happen next? So this is, as you can see here, it's called The Rise of Gaming Revenue Visualized. So this is sort of a famous data set from a company called Pelham Smithers. And there's a few different versions of this. This is just one that a website called The Visual Capitalist kind of created. And I think it's as good a example. It's quite a lot going on there. I'm not going to go through all these sort of things, but it kind of shows it in a fairly colourful manner. And I think we can pick out some obvious trends from this. So let's get going. So we can see here we're starting off games really in the early 1970s. There's not really a lot going on for a few years. And then we have this kind of the kind of 1970s to the kind of 1980s is obviously the kind of the first period of kind of gaming as we understand it, certainly home gaming down here. But the main thing that's going on here in this period of time is arcades. So arcades, particularly games like Pac-Man, but lots of other kind of well-known games. And the thing maybe we forget now, many years on, is that arcades were pretty big. That's $40 billion of revenue globally back in the 1980s, which is actually bigger than console games are now. So you know, arcades were massive. We also have here the kind of start of the home consoles, so stuff like Atari, particularly in the States. And I guess it's kind of sort of well known. Maybe for younger viewers, kind of just don't know about this part of games. But we kind of had this kind of this big boom cycle, both for arcade and home consoles, and then we have this kind of collapse here, particularly for home consoles with the kind of collapse of Atari in the States. Also arcades kind of go through a down cycle, but we do have the start of PCs here. So kind of into the mid 80s, we start to have this kind of revival of actually all the three different genres we have there. So PCs are getting bigger, arcades are getting bigger, though never as big as they were in the 70s, and then consoles slowly getting bigger. But one thing that is interesting to see here is you kind of get the idea of there are sort of waves going on here. So I guess this is one of the reasons they use this way to visualize. You kind of have waves of success, waves of kind of trends in which certain types of gaming hardware, which is really what we're measuring here, this sort of types of gaming technology maybe kind of rise and fall. So arcades, we can see, and I guess as we all know, arcades have basically kind of dwindled to almost zero now. And I guess COVID has sort of killed off arcades as places where people come and play games. Still probably culturally in Japan, still important, but for the rest of the world, there's not a lot of revenue. So this is all linked by revenue. I should point that out. This isn't number of people playing or anything like that. This is the amount of dollars being spent in the games industry every year. So arcades sort of gone away, and it's kind of hard to see arcades coming back. Really, I think with where we are in the world now, we're much less focused on online sort of things, and maybe we'll talk a bit about that. Sort of metaverses maybe coming in here, which are a kind of a reimagination of arcades. But arcades kind of gone away. So let's have a look at console. So I guess we know a bit more about this, or we're a bit more familiar with the various waves of console. So we have the Nintendo starting up here. We have the SNES, the NES, and the SNES. And we have Sega in here as well, and then Sony starting, PlayStation obviously probably still the biggest console brand, and then we go through the various cycles. Microsoft starts 2001 with Xbox, Sega goes away as a hardware manufacturer, and then we have Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo kind of going through these cycles here. I think what's often misunderstood or kind of maybe not misunderstood, maybe not recognised, is that actually console, although it kind of drives a lot of the headlines, drives a lot of the media, drives a lot of kind of footage, it's still pretty small. Now, $33 billion may not sound like a small amount of money, and clearly it isn't. But if we compare it to the other sectors in the games industry now, mobile and PC, it's the smallest. And while it's growing, it tends to the cycles of console tend to grow, as the console hardware becomes more available. So we've just had a PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X and S launching. They're very expensive at the moment, so not many people have them. Over the next few years, the price will drop, more people will have them, and then we'll go through a cycle of that's the kind of peak for that generation, and then there'll be another generation, maybe. I don't know, maybe that's something we'll talk about. But consoles they don't have explosive growth. They have growth, and it kind of goes up and down a little bit. And I think that's something that's kind of underestimated, because consoles tend to be, the most accessible form of high fidelity gaming. So your AAA games are in PC and console, but console it basically gives you kind of more bang for your buck. When you buy a PlayStation, you're getting better visuals earlier, better visuals cheaper than buying a PC, just for gaming at least. So PC has had its ups and downs. I guess if people remember, maybe it wasn't that long ago, maybe a few decades ago now, people were saying, the death of PC gaming. It's all going to be consoles now. Clearly not happened. And actually, what we've seen here is, while obviously PC is an open platform and you have lots of kind of hardware innovation, it's more expensive to build, but people love building their own PCs. And we've seen a lot of innovation here. So while consoles have produced brilliant sort of games and very accessible games, the innovation has really happened on PC. So online gaming first on PC, then moves to console. MMO RPGs start on PC, move to kind of a console. We have things like kind of user-generated content worlds, Minecraft, Roblox. Still they're on console now, but still predominantly kind of PC sort of things. Twitch, not a gaming platform, but a kind of a platform used mainly by gaming. Starts on PC and then kind of sort of moves over into console. So PC is interesting. It is bigger than console. $40 billion. These are all estimates. I don't think they're wildly off, but these are estimates. And obviously the other thing is consoles are sort of a kind of luxury for many people. May seem a weird thing to say, but there are people in the world who clearly can't afford consoles, and they may be able to afford PCs. For a long time, you couldn't sell consoles in, say, China. Consoles were not allowed to be sold in China. So historically, they've only been allowed to be sold in China for a few years, really. So we have this other kind of thing that PC is just more open and used for things other than gaming. So kind of a bit more of an interesting platform. Okay, we've got two more things to discuss here. So we have Handheld. Handheld, to me, is a bit like arcades now. So has been big in the past. This has pretty much been owned by Nintendo, obviously, with its Game Boy, its DS, 3DS. I guess what we've done here is they've assumed that the Switch is a console, even though it's mainly used probably as a portable device, I would think. But the Switch is in console rather than handheld. And we see handheld. It's had its day. Pokemon launches on Game Boy, but mobile phone comes in and basically handheld goes to zero. Will it ever come back to a large size? Well, it depends a bit on what Nintendo are thinking about. But clearly at the moment, handheld is effectively zero. And the big rise here over the last decade, these numbers seem a bit wrong to me, I have to say. So we have here 2007, Apple's iPhone released. It wasn't until really 2012 that free-to-play gaming comes in, free-to-play mobile gaming comes in, and the rise here. So mobile estimated at $85 billion of value, so bigger than PC and console put together. Let me say that again. Bigger than PC and console put together, mobile games. You may not think they're serious games. You may not think they're hardcore games. They are bigger in financial terms than these two put together. Mobile didn't start off until 2012. So actually, they got Candy Crush here. The games in 2012 were Puzzle and Dragons in Japan, a kind of match-3 RPG. Clash of Clans, Heyday in the West. So those are the first billion-dollar games being launched. Clash of Clans, Candy Crush Saga is a bit later, 2013. So this is wrong, and actually the growth of mobile is actually much quicker. So if anything, this underestimates how fast mobile has grown. And the reason mobile has grown is obviously everyone has a mobile device now. So not everyone is going to ever have a console. Not everyone ever is going to have a PC. Everyone in the world is going to have a mobile device. And the games are going to play certainly very different to what we have on PC. Although, as they point out here, you can play Fortnite now across, cross-platform gaming is now a thing. But mobile games are basically a very different sort of mechanic, and still the majority, all the revenue here is free to play. So that means you can play the game for free. You can buy in-app purchases to speed things up, generally. Whereas PC and console games are still generally sort of the paid model, although obviously in-app purchases are coming in a lot stronger, but there's still quite a strong focus on paid, kind of pay up front for the games here. And we have a little bit of VR in here, so VR very interesting, but clearly a bit like a subset of console, or even you need. We're starting to see the first VR headsets that work on their own. But if you want to do high-end VR gaming, you need a high-end PC, or you use the console, or PlayStation in particular, kind of supports its own VR standard. It's really not taken off. You can see, it's a tiny little purple thing up here, not taken off. Cloud, even small at the moment. We know what's happened with kind of Google Stadia, whatever. Not really worked out. Eventually, everything will go into the cloud, I guess, to some degree. But people have been experimenting with cloud for like 10 years or so, and it's not really taken off. I guess. If we're learning something about mobile is about accessibility. So mobile is not about the highest resolution, the best graphics, the best sound, the 200-inch TVs or whatever. Mobile is about gaming with what you've got. And I guess cloud will sort of, whether cloud is its own separate section or whether cloud goes into PC or cloud goes into mobile, we're seeing cloud go everywhere really. That's interesting. Because that means we're getting out of this kind of hardware-focused problem. VR is all about hardware. That's the problem. So VR is going to require you to do hardware. AR is interesting because you can do AR on mobile devices. Again, not really taken off. We have all these kind of interesting technologies that I think we will be kind of talking about in Beyond Games. So we have AI as a kind of hard technology, artificial intelligence, how computers interact with human beings. Fascinating stuff in how that's going to change games. For me, though, what's happening here is the success of games is they become more accessible, and the sort of games become less hardcore and easier to interact with, and the games sort of, with my hardcore gaming hat on, they become softer. They become a different sort of game. Grand Theft Auto 5 is different to Candy Crush Saga. There's no way we can say that's not the case, but people lots of people who play Candy Crush Saga are clearly not going to play Grand Theft Auto ever. And mobile allows people to address these sort of people who don't even think themselves as gamers, but may spend hundreds of dollars a month on gaming, may spend more money a month than people who are playing Grand Theft Auto or Call of Duty. So this is kind of where we are. Clearly, I think we've seen historically that gaming grows. I don't see any reason for that not to happen, although it may go kind of up or down. 2020 was a massive year for gaming because of COVID. Everyone was inside, or people were inside for a lot longer, so people spent more time gaming. I think that just accelerates the trend we see. I guess the big interesting one for me, this is a bit of a personal hobby horse, is at the moment this money is being spent by consumers, gamers, are spending money, and it's going to game companies. And it's basically like every you don't get anything back for that. You get your enjoyment, obviously, in the time you spend. I think new payment systems, particularly based around blockchain systems, will allow revenue models to change quite drastically. So at the moment we have around $165 billion estimated in 2020. I think it was higher than that actually. Some people are estimating $200 billion for 2021. Everyone likes round numbers. I like round numbers. I'm saying over the next 10 years this will go to $1 trillion because I think we'll start to see kind of players spending money within games, and they'll start trading stuff. So at the moment you can't trade your Fortnite skins. That's illegal. That's against the terms and conditions of the game. I think that will change very quickly. We're seeing that already, really. So people will be able to start trading their in-game items, and then in-game economies will not be about games so much. They'll be about trading, and they'll be kind of breaking out of games. And I think why games have gone from this to this is accessibility, and games have leaked out into the rest of the kind of what we might consider the real-world economy, the online ecosystem. We could use the word again. Don't like it very much. Metaverses, don't quite know what that means, but metaverses are clearly coming. And when you have these kind of interesting digital asset payment systems, economies, then you're going to start to see a much more a boom in economies and a lot of actually kind of financialization of what goes on. Whether that's good or bad, that's for a discussion on another point. But this is what I see anyway when I look at what's happened to gaming so far, and when I take that learnings and think about what's beyond games. I see games really affecting lots of different things. Games becoming, in a sense, diluted, but diluted in a good way. And games, games in conjunction with these other technologies, I think AR and VR are pretty powerful. Maybe niche, but pretty powerful. Cloud makes things much more accessible. AI makes things much more accessible and easy to use, and blockchain makes things much more accessible in terms of kind of financialization of games. So I think that's where we're going. I certainly don't know all the answers. I have been in games for a long time, so I've seen a few things. So maybe that makes me a bit more nuanced. Who knows? But please subscribe to the channel if you want to keep in touch with what's going on, and as we investigate this fascinating kind of future of gaming.